He walks through the city at dusk, alone, playing a clay flute. He wears the costume of a god, turquoise and obsidian, his skin painted the black of the night sky. And as he passes, the people of Tenochtitlan stop and bow and touch the earth and lift it to their lips. He is not pretending. For this 1 year, the Aztecs believe he is the god, Tezcatlipoca, walking among them in a young man's body. And on a day already chosen, only months away, he will climb a temple, and they will cut out his heart. And he knows it. It is easy to hear this and reach for a single word. Brutal. The Aztecs are remembered more than almost any people for the blood on their temples. And the question that has followed them for 5 centuries is always the same. How could they do this? But that question already hides its own answer. To the people who raised this young man up as a god and then took his life, this was not cruelty. It was the highest honor their world could give, and it was a debt that had to be paid. So before we call it anything, let us try for 10 minutes to see it the way they did. To understand the man, you have to understand the god he became. Tezcatlipoca. The name means smoking mirror, for the disc of polished obsidian he wears in place of his right foot, a black glass in which the Aztecs said he could see everything that happened in the world and everything hidden in a human heart. He was the god of the night sky and the cold north wind, of sorcery and of fortune. He gave power and he took it away. He could lift a poor man to a throne and ruin a king on a whim. He was not kind and he was not cruel. He was everything that could not be predicted or controlled, and the Aztecs feared him and loved him more than almost any other god. To carry his image for a year was to carry the most dangerous honor in the empire. Each year, the priests went searching. And the one they chose was taken from the captives of war, but not just any captive. He had to be perfect. A body without a single scar, straight-limbed, a face people would want to look at, neither too tall nor too short. He had to move with grace, and he had to be able to learn the flute. They were not choosing a victim, they were choosing a god, and a god must be flawless. When they found him, his life as a man ended, and his life as Tezcatlipoca began. For 1 full year, he lived as the god on earth. He was taught to carry himself like a deity, to walk slowly, to hold a bouquet of flowers the way the great lords did, to draw on a tube of tobacco, and above all, to play the clay flute. 8 attendants went with him everywhere. He was dressed in the god's own regalia, his body blackened, his head crowned with eagle down and flowers, golden bells at his legs, seashells across his chest. And he walked the city freely, by day and by night, playing. When the people heard those flutes in the dark, they knew the god was near, and they knelt. Even the emperor honored him and adorned him and treated him as divine. For 1 year, he wanted for nothing. Every desire was answered. He was, in the most literal sense his world could imagine, a living god. Then, 20 days before the end, everything turned. They took away the god's costume and dressed him instead as a warrior. and they gave him 4 young women, raised and dressed as 4 goddesses: the goddess of flowers, the goddess of the young green maize, the goddess of salt, and a 4th goddess beside them. For these last 20 days, they were his companions and his comfort. The man who had been alone inside his divinity was, at the very end, given tenderness. And still, the day came on. The festival was called Toxcatl, kept in the dry heat just before the rains, the great feast of Tezcatlipoca. For days, the whole city moved through the temple courts in dance and song and feasting, and the young god danced among them. Then, on the appointed day, he left the 4 women behind. He was led away to a small plain temple that stood alone, apart from the great pyramids, called the Toxcatl. No crowd followed him there. The grandeur was over. He climbed the steps of that little temple himself, on his own feet. No one dragged him. And as he climbed, he carried the clay flutes he had played all year, the flutes that had told a whole city its god was passing. On each step, he stopped and broke one. One flute, one step, one shard of the year left behind him. By the time he reached the top, his hands were empty and the music was gone. There the priests were waiting. They laid him back across the stone, and the obsidian blade came down, and they lifted his heart toward the sun. His body was carried, not thrown, down the steps. And somewhere in the city that same day, the priests had already chosen the next young man and begun to dress him. So we return to the question, why? Why raise a man to the height of heaven only to break him on a stone? The answer lives in the deepest thing the Aztecs believed about the world, that everything alive is borrowed. In the beginning, they said, the gods threw themselves into a fire and spilled their own blood to set the sun moving, and to make the first human beings from the ground bones of the dead and the blood of the gods. Existence itself was bought with the death of gods. And a gift like that leaves a debt. They believed the sun would halt, and the rains would fail, and the world would end if that debt went unpaid. So they paid it the only way they thought worthy, with the most precious thing they had. A human life, and not a broken one, a perfect one, a life that had been made into a god. And the broken flutes are the heart of it. For a year he held music and beauty and worship and every pleasure. And at the end, one step at a time, he let all of it go. The Aztecs were teaching themselves something they believed about every life, not only his, that splendor is real and that it is also lent, and that the day comes for everyone when the flutes are broken and the borrowed thing is handed back. He only lived that truth faster and more brightly than the rest of us. We will never fully know what he felt on those steps. Some accounts insist he went gladly, as a man receiving an honor. Others remind us that he had been a prisoner of war, and that a prisoner's willingness is a complicated thing. Both may be true at once. What is certain is that the people watching did not believe they were watching a murder. They believed they were watching a gift returned. A man given 1 year of complete divinity, and then given back, like all things, to the gods who had only ever loaned him out. And the next morning, in the dark, the new god was already walking the city, playing his flute, with 1 year left to live.